Hey howdy hey, welcome back to Trek on the Tube and welcome to another spoiler-heavy Star Trek review. Today, we're talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the show that dared to go where no current live-action Star Trek show has gone before. Straight back to technology that the Star Wars shows have been using for years now, and also straight back to the episodic format that Star Trek started using in the 1960s. In addition to all of this boldly going where many have gone before, the show definitely did not shy away from reusing pre-established characters as well as quite simply remaking existing stories. But I'll tell you what, though this may all sound very cynical as an introduction, the season actually turned out to be fine. Which, when you think about it, is pretty much how you'd expect it to end up, considering it was relying on elements that have already been proven to work. Now, first of all, yes, it was in actuality playing things quite safe, not making too many dramatic, bold choices as if to counterbalance the trend of going completely off the rails with each new season of Discovery, but also, look at it this way, and let's push the expression, "this is not your daddy's Star Trek," a little further into a metaphor that is, Star Trek is like your granny's cooking. I know everyone's like, where the hell is this guy going with this right now? What the hell is this dude saying? Look, your grandma, she's an amazing cook. And she has this wonderful recipe that she's been preparing beautifully for years and years. The whole family loves it. And then one day, you decide to try it. Now the thing is, you're using the same ingredients, you're following the same steps, from the same recipe, you're putting in just as much love as she did, and so the end result turns out pretty good, but it doesn't turn out exactly like she used to make it because, well, she didn't make it. You did.
What's wrong with my cooking?
So even though it's the same dish, made in the same way, it's not as good. It's not as authentic. It's not bad though, it's fine. And Strange New Worlds, in a lot of ways, is kinda like that, but for Star Trek. It has all the right ingredients, it's following the right recipe. It's not like PICARD Season 2 that decided to burn the cookbook as well as the meal itself. A lot of effort went into this first season's conception, but even with all these things accomplished, it's not quite yet it. But it could be. And we'll get into that in just a second, but first let's address and talk about those technical aspects we always like to go over. For starters, the production quality. As I've always said, I don't mind if the sets, the costumes, the VFX aren't at their best in a Star Trek show, because those elements are only really there to support the story being told. They're secondary in a lot of ways. It's not like with a few other shows that I watch where the story is so baseline that I go in expecting some high production quality to compensate. Those shows I watch for the spectacle, so to speak. Star Trek I watch for the lessons, for the ideas. That being said, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, much like its contemporary Star Trek kin, is doing a great job in terms of production quality. All the costumes were fantastic, all of the sets were beautifully crafted, they fit well together and created believable alien aesthetics when on alien worlds. In terms of VFX, we got to see the AR wall, the augmented reality, new age green screen put to good use. Whether it was with set extensions or just barren wastelands on these alien worlds, the AR wall added a lot of value to the show, and honestly, you can tell it's either a new team working on it or that practice makes perfect, because the final product was almost seamless this time around, as opposed to the first time Star Trek started using the technology in Discovery, where we could more distinctly make out where the set ended and the wall began. None of that was present anymore. Carrying on with the visual effects, I thought that all the space shots and the ship shots were impeccable, with the added bonus this time around of actually being able to see and appreciate the ships. The most recent seasons of new Star Trek have been doing this a lot better than those first seasons of Discovery when Star Trek first came back. Letting us see the ships, see the spatial geography of the scenes is important, so I'm very happy that it's being done. Now, before we move on to something else, I do feel obligated to say this. I'm still not a fan of this redesigned Enterprise. I don't like what it looks like from the outside, and I really don't like how these new sets have nothing to do with the ones from the original series. Sickbay and engineering being the worst offenders. This is not a dig at the artistry or build quality, it really is just creative decisions I'm not a fan of. It all comes down to personal taste. There you go. I've said my piece. We'll move on now. Although I'll add that this show is probably gonna run for a minimum of 5 seasons, so perhaps things will have time to change. Let's give this show not only the benefit of the doubt, but also the space to grow and unfold, which is something I'd say about the Gorn as well. Most of the species encountered in this show were, as per Star Trek tradition, humanoid, with well done makeup, by the way, but of course one species wasn't humanoid. You may have noticed, the Gorn. And look, the visuals they went for served the story they wanted to tell very well. Do I agree with those visuals? I mean, not really, maybe. Like, I find convoluted ways to reconcile the Gorn from Strange New Worlds with those from the original series, the animated series, or even Lower Decks, but it all remains a little, I guess, flimsy in explanation. As we just said though, benefit of the doubt, space to grow and unfold. As it stands, I will reserve judgment on the Gorn hatchlings. So yeah, the Gorn, the Enterprise at large, those are like, I guess, the two most drastic changes that we've had in terms of like visual continuity with like older Star Trek. What puzzles me the most about the Gorn is that like current Star Trek shows, aka Lower Decks, are actually making the Gorn look like they looked in the 60s. Or maybe it's like easier because they have like an animated form, so you can get away with, I guess, the more cartoonish style of the Gorn suit, whereas something like Strange New Worlds couldn't really do that. But it does puzzle me as to why 2 new Star Trek shows are going in 2 different directions. You'd think that at some point they would find some sort of like direction for like the franchise. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. That is something much larger than Strange New Worlds Season 1 itself. Today we're talking about just 1 season, so I'll say this, as I said in the beginning, these changes aren't dramatic, they aren't, you know, completely off the rails. I think that they're just kind of, in a way, adapting the visuals to a modern audience into a modern style, and they're doing so in a more subtle way than they did when they first started off this new generation of Star Trek. Music. I always like to take the time to drop a few lines about the music on these shows, because even if it's an element that often goes unnoticed or unrecognized in these online reviews, it's very much something that can make or break an episode, and that's kind of what happened here. The score, in my opinion, was hit and miss. Generally speaking, more hit than miss, don't fret. Like, the opening sequence is wonderful, the use of established themes, but with a twist for species we've already seen before, I like that. And again, most of the time the music fit the scene, it accompanied quite well, without overpowering it, or obviously trying to sway the viewers emotionally. Now and then, though, some sort of creative decision went wrong, and with the episode The Elysian Kingdom, for example, all of the music was constantly so serious, so somber, you know, so dramatic, and that didn't suit the tone the episode seemed to be going for. I liked the episode. I thought it was fun. I didn't think it was too early in the show or in the season to do something a little more whimsical, but the disconnect between the dialogue slash actions and the score created awkward moments where a more light-hearted, cheerful orchestral accompaniment would have not. When it comes to the directing, the lighting, the cinematography, the shot composition, I won't bore you too much with details, but I honestly think it was all very accomplished. The lighting accurately reflected the style or tone they were going for in each episode, the biggest example of that being the original series-inspired lighting for the season finale. The directing style was overall more in line with what we're used to seeing in older Star Trek, more, you know, static shots, not too many useless spinny moments. Although they did do that one around the transporter sequence, which just rubbed me the wrong way. It was fun how they adapted the directing, however, ever so slightly to each genre the episodes were depicting. I like it when shows do that. Final technical aspect, the performances. This is only going to take a few seconds. Everyone killed it. I have no complaints. The main cast is talented, so is the recurring cast. The guest actors did a good job too. It was all around quite pleasurable to see these people act. Actually, I do have one minor complaint. The actor portraying Captain Angel gave us a performance that was a bit too obvious, a bit too like Disney Channel once her intentions were revealed, but that could be a writing issue. I don't want to single her out. I just don't know. But yeah, that's the only little complaint. Okay, so up until now, I have had no major criticisms when it comes to this first season. It truly looks like there are only details that I disliked. So what's up with this not your granny's cooking thing I went on about in the beginning of the video? Well, in this 10-episode run, there are only really 2 episodes where I felt something watching them. 2 episodes that moved me, or how can I put this? Excited me in a way that only my favorite shows can. The 2 episodes, for your curiosity's sake, were A Quality of Mercy and Children of the Comet. I felt like both episodes not only put the semi-episodic, semi-serialized format to good use by further developing great character-defining arcs, as well as delivering inspiring and innovative self-contained stories, but also, both of those episodes, for me, had that little X-factor, that little spice that adds the depth one looks for in an episode of Star Trek. Children of the Comet did its own thing within the Strange New Worlds parameters. A Quality of Mercy utilized story elements and characters from an existing show and episode, but ultimately both delivered the best kind of science fiction one can ask for on television. So mad props to that. I loved kind of like the reveals, the denouement of the whole thing, and yeah, those performances were fantastic. When it comes to the 8 other episodes, however, I mean, they were alright. I mean, there's one I didn't like, but I won't hold that against the show necessarily. On the contrary, it's almost a compliment in a strange way. It means the show is experimenting at least a little bit. Like, even the Lower Deck seasons always have that one episode I'm just not a fan of, and that's bound to happen when doing a primarily episodic style show with a whole variety of ideas being shot at you. Anyway, yeah, generally speaking, the rest of the episodes for me didn't stand out too much, and I think that's the complaint. If it weren't for the channel, I wouldn't have been compelled to revisit them anytime soon, and for the most part, the 50-minute runtime ended up making them feel a little sluggish. Another contributing factor to my overall lack of extreme enthusiasm is how safe everything was played in terms of stories being told. Like, you get the perfect society that runs on a kid's life force plot. That reminded me of Snowpiercer, and apparently there's even a story before Snowpiercer that did this. The whole Gorn thing was clearly an homage to Alien. The Elysian Kingdom is some Q Robin Hood adjacent thing. Ghosts of Illyria dealt with some sort of bizarre alien infection. We've seen variants on that story in every iteration of Star Trek so far. On paper, nothing here is terrible. On the contrary, they're all proven concepts, but that's the thing. It's all already been done. Before we move on to my final notes, I do want to make something clear in case it isn't already. I'm not saying the stories told within the episodes or the episodes themselves were bad or even boring. For the most part, they were actually pretty good and I enjoyed watching them. The show is entertaining and the season is solid. It's just that most episodes lack that little spark that could elevate them into something greater. Alright, final notes. The Doctor's Daughter. I am so grateful that shit is over. I know some may say the wrap-up was a little too quick. Maybe we didn't have time to properly get invested in the situation. I hear you, and I do see the validity of asking for a more drawn-out storyline, but I would only argue that myself if the storyline was worth following in the first place, and it wasn't. It was a terrible story idea, and having a somewhat rushed end to it, I think, in the long run, is the greater win. I mean, for real. From a narrative perspective, this whole concept of having the perpetually dying daughter served no other purpose than adding a dramatic backstory to Mbenga. And not every character needs a dramatic backstory. Pike has one, Una has one, Spock has one, La'an has one, we get it. There's also the fact having this child continuously locked up in the transporter creates some sort of unnecessary hurdle for the writers when doing episodes, you know, about the ship crashing or the power going out. It's like you always have to consider this damn obstacle in your storytelling. Clearly, they noticed it was a hassle very early on, so they gave her a new life and turned the traumatic story of our Doctor into a happy ending. I'm glad. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned how puzzling it was to even keep a character in the transporter buffer in this time period. It didn't feel like something technologically achievable in the time of Strange New Worlds, so having it only be for a short few, I don't know if it's weeks or months, it at least kind of helps justify that. Hemmer, Chief Engineer Hammer the Man is dead, or so we assume. Maybe they'll bring him back in some sort of Shaxx way, but I'm not really betting on that. Look, I'm not too troubled. He was an interesting character to have around for a while. It was awesome to see some Anar in Starfleet. No comment on the redesign. I'll just leave it at that. I think he was utilized well enough for the time he got on screen, and although I'm not one to ask for characters' deaths all the time, I do think one now and then makes the stakes of exploring the galaxy more believable. All I'm hoping for is not Scotty going forward, and you know, hopefully at least another alien to replace him. Fingers crossed it's an Andorian. Look, I like seeing aliens. I don't like having just humans. I understand that it's cheaper to do, but if they could replace an alien with an alien, that would be a win for me. Cybok. His reveal was in the episode that I disliked, but the fact this show is going to explore some more of Cybok can only be considered a win. Dude is an integral part of one of the worst Star Trek films, but is honestly one of the most interesting antagonists the franchise has ever delivered. If you haven't seen Star Trek V, I would ask you to consider watching it, at least for Cybok's sake. And also, you know, whether you like Discovery and Strange New Worlds or not, the story of the Sarek family is one element that has been handled very well over the years, from Amanda to Burnham to Sarek and Spock, and all of their different dynamics. I can't wait to now see some Cybok sprinkled into the mix. And lastly, my final comment on the season would have to be that the screen time everyone got, though not, you know, equal, felt adequately balanced. It's not an original series, just the trio thing that they're delivering, and I'm grateful for that, even if, on a very personal level, I would have done more Una by completely getting rid of Kirk. Like, I didn't need Sam, but I was promised number one, so that would be an easy choice for me. Very small sidebar about Una, by the way. I'm very, very excited to see where they're going with her story in Season 2, and I thought that, like, the way they handled her character and the development of her character in this season was really good. I wasn't expecting that at all. I was just being like, okay, she's like a human, moving on, but that's not the case, and it's really cool. I really like what they did. Okay, that's all of it. I hope I didn't bore you to death, and I hope you perceive this as a positive review, because I genuinely think Strange New Worlds Season 1 delivered something solid. No, it isn't it just yet, but it could get there sometime very soon. I'm excited to see where the show goes next. To give you guys some added context, because I know that so many of you like enjoying like new Star Trek to like older Star Trek, that kind of stuff. Like, if I were to rank, you know, Strange New Worlds Season 1 somewhere within like all of the seasons of Star Trek that have been delivered so far since the original series Season 1, it would probably be like upper mid, if that makes sense to you. So yeah, like, I honestly, at this point, whether it be contemporary Star Trek coming out today or Star Trek that came out in the 90s or in the 60s, like, my rankings for the seasons and for the quality of the shows are just all over the place. There's no clear, defined line with like, oh my goodness, new Star Trek is all at the bottom. I don't know. Maybe some people still think like this. I don't think so. So yeah, this is like an upper mid season in terms of ranking. Small side note that I completely forgot to mention in this review, so I'm just adding it now. Captain Pike's fate. The whole thing about him, you know, getting into the accident and he's going to be in the chair and all of that. We've seen it in the cage, we've seen it in the original series, we've seen it addressed in Discovery, and yeah, it's kind of like part of who he is. In this show, it's kind of, I guess, defining some of the choices that he makes, and that plays a big part in one of the episodes. I honestly think that up until now, it has been well balanced. Like, it's present, but it's not overpowering, it's not overbearing, and if they can keep it this way for the future of the show, I think that it'll be really good when it eventually, you know, comes to its conclusion. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, share, comment, hit the thanks button if you want to help me out. Go and become a patron if you want to help me out more. Believe me, this takes a lot of time to do all these things, and that's why I can't do my like episodic reviews. I wish I could, but I just can't. I can't do the weekly reviews anymore. But yeah, big shout out to the channel patrons. Thank you so much for helping me out. You're wonderful. As usual, live long and prosper. P.S. I know you probably didn't see as much of me as usual in this video. I don't know if you even noticed, but the Google Pixel 6 goddamn overheats when I try to film in high quality. So after like 10-15 minutes, I can't film anymore. So I was just like, you know what, I'll just record some audio and then I'll film when it cools down. So yeah, you might want to get on that, Pixel. I don't know if that's a thing that you can fix, you know, in post, but yeah. Alright, live long and prosper. Love you guys.